What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Legacy United Deluxe Class Lockdown, surprisingly inspired by the amazing Revenge of the Fallen design. I guess it's kind of cool to finally see Legacy crossing over with those live action movies, and as we check out the details, by far the biggest selling point of this guy would have to be that brand new head sculpt, which is surprisingly pretty much spot on to that original 2009 design, although unfortunately the same can't really be said as we check out the rest of the robot design, because whilst there are similarities, I really think the colour scheme is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, especially as we check out the leg design. Unfortunately, this is lacking by far the most iconic design trait of Revenge of the Fallen Lockdown, that being the incredibly long legs. Although, one good thing about this guy being a junkie on repaint is that he is a weaponizer, so there may be a fix for that. As we spin him around here to the back, despite the repaint on the front being pretty decent, I've got to be honest guys, this looks so bland and boring. Not even those metallic steel patches which we did see on both Axle Grease and Scraphook have been decked out in a silver. Now, considering that this guy is a trophy hunter, he cruises across the galaxy, at least to myself, it makes perfect sense for him to be patching himself up, so I definitely think that's a missed opportunity. So overall, when it does come around to this guy's design, I think for kind of a one-off for the Legacy universe, he doesn't look too bad stacked up against some of the other Legacy updates. At least to myself, it kind of seems as if though he's travelled through that multiversal portal, and much like some of the Prime Universe characters, has been G1ified, although in his defense, I don't think it's turned out anywhere near as bad as some of them, although I think when it comes to a definitive Generations lockdown, Hasbro haven't quite nailed it just yet. Although, considering that this lockdown originally started off life as a Junkion, he is absolutely stacked in the weapon department. So up first we have not one, but two blasters, one of which has been very nicely painted, so that you can fuse it with this hook to recreate by far one of Lockdown's most signature weapons, so iconic that it even stood a redesign by Michael Bay. We also see the return of that exposed engine, which when it comes to detail, I think is looking sick. You can totally combine this, I guess, to kind of throw it back to the animated days where Lockdown savagely nicked Ratchet's EMP. And last, but by no means least, we also have two triple exhausts. Considering that Lockdown is a bounty hunter, I'm almost certain that he could most definitely rip these bad boys off and use them to torture the Autobots. Turning to Lockdown's posability, considering that he is by far the galaxy's most feared bounty hunter, let's see what moves he can throw down. So to begin with, the head unfortunately is only on a mere swivel. Despite looking the part, it unfortunately lacks the ball joints as seen on the original. The shoulders can rotate all the way around, they can also kick out to the side, although once you reach a certain point, do have a tendency to kind of smack him into the side of the head, so I don't think that's too practical. There is also a bicep cut, a double jointed elbow, also wrist rotation, the waist can rotate all the way around with no issue, the hips can kick forwards roughly to that far, they can kick back honestly just as far, which I thought was super dynamic. They can also kick out to the side, so I should imagine that he will have no issues in sending his enemies flying through that multiversal portal. There is also a thigh cut, a knee bend, which pretty much only goes to 90, although as we check out the ankles, in addition to rocking forwards and rocking backwards, they can also tilt side to side in both directions, so most definitely packing in the articulation department. But as I'm sure you guys all know by now, to see what Lockdown is truly capable of, now let's put him through the pose test. Locking down with those robot mode size comparisons, first up we have the Junkion Axle Grease. So with the exception of a brand new head sculpt, Lockdown is pretty much a repaint from the ground upwards, although I will be honest guys, the designers did integrate some pretty cool design traits into Axle Grease, so that once it was repainted into Lockdown, those also looked pretty sweet. So for example, I do believe these are like animal horns integrated into the chest unit, which I think is definitely fitting for a bounty hunter. Next up we are jumping over to the live action movie universe with the Studio Series Lockdown. I believe the second most recent mainline release for the character, and I'm gonna be honest guys, I am an absolute sucker for Lockdown and can say with absolute ease that these two releases here are mid at best, definitely not what the amazing character of Lockdown deserves. I'm wishing more than anything that we can see this design revisited, maybe as a full-blown Voyager class. Next up we have the animated universe Deluxe Class Bumblebee, who was a supreme update, so I'm hoping in the future we can maybe see something similar here for Lockdown, because we without any doubt need need a way bigger opponent to stack up alongside the pretty awesome animated Optimus Prime, which, speaking of, we are now throwing it all the way back, I believe, to 2008 with the original Deluxe class animated Lockdown. Now, I found it crazy that both of these are Deluxe class figures released by Hasbro, but one thing which I did think was pretty cool is that the design team specifically mentioned that this isn't supposed to be an animated universe version of Lockdown. That gives me hope that, considering they've acknowledged that maybe in the future we can see a brand new version of Lockdown, which I think by today's standards would most definitely have to be a Voyager class in order to match the amazing heights which we did see first time round. And last but by no means least, we are whacking out by far one of my all-time favourite Deluxe class figures. We have that Revenge of the Fallen Lockdown. It really is just a shame that they never had the budget to completely redesign this character to resemble the wicked robot design of this original Deluxe class. With the Studio Series concept art subline now being a thing, I really hope more than anything that we can see amazing designs such as this revisited. I mean, can you guys imagine if they were to reapproach this design maybe as a full-blown leader class? I think it would look seriously mental, and not to mention the articulation I definitely think would be a big step up in comparison. Now, let's lock down this guy's transformation. So, for the first step, you are going to want to flip him here backwards like that. You're then going to take a hold of those massive feet and begin to compress these into what will become the front part of the vehicle form. Let's spin around here to this side and again do exactly the same. So, make sure that you are then compressing inwards exactly like that. Now that those two bad boys are prepped and ready for battle, you can then proceed to combine those directly down the middle. Now you're going to grab a hold of the waist joint and rotate this here all the way around until the back is now facing the front. Here is where you are then going to come to the fists. We're going to make use out of those rotation joints and pretty much rotate these here outwards. So right now it should look something along the lines of that. Let's do the same here for this side. So rotate that sucker there outwards. Now that's complete, we can then take a hold of these big meaty fake butterfly joints and pull these here inwards. So make sure that you also do the same here for this side. Now that's complete, we can spin around to this guy's backpack, and now is where you are going to want to begin to pretty much untab this exactly like that. So angle those suckers there outwards. Now that's complete, we can take a hold of the backpack and begin to bring this here backwards. Then we're going to take a hold of the head and the neck, and this will flip backwards, transforming into the windshield. Now we're going to make use out of the hip joints and begin to bring this here forwards exactly like that. Then you're going to flip here to the underside, and on the inside part of the thigh is a big meaty tab that's going to slide into that slot. So snap that sucker into place, and again make sure you do the same on the opposite side. Now is where we can come back to the chest piece. You are then going to begin to hinge this here backwards. We're now going to take a hold of the shoulder joint, flip this upwards and make use out of this hinge joint. So you're going to want to begin to compress this inwards, 2 clicks, and then we can take the shoulder joint itself and click this here outwards. Now is where you are going to make use out of the bicep rotation. So swing that bad boy there around. This tab is then going to slide into this slot. So begin to kind of curl this here inside. Once that's complete, we can then fully compress that bottom joint in. Again, angle this here upwards, make use out of both the shoulder and the transformation joint to compress this section here inwards. So just begin to flip that sucker there inwards like that. You'll then spin around here to the front, make use out of the bicep cut, and to the best of your ability, you're now going to want to make use out of that double jointed elbow, slide that bad boy inside, and then what you'll do is combine these suckers here directly down the middle, exactly like that. Now we're going to flip here to the underside. There is one big meaty tab which is then going to slide here into that slot. So make sure that that sucker is fully snapped into place, and that is the base vehicle mode of Lockdown now fully transformed. But we can make this look even better once we whack out some of those additional accessories. So first up, you're going to want to take these dual blasters and snap these suckers directly down the middle. You will then want to do exactly the same here for Ratchet's EMP blaster, so also combine that baddie. Then you'll take those boosters and begin to attach those into the back of the truck until you are left with something which should be looking like this. Now we'll bring out the engine block and snap this into the front end of the vehicle form. You will then want to take a hold of those triple exhaust pipes, and those can attach onto any of the ports that you see here along the side, including the rims, although personally I think this is by far their best look. And then finally, to complete weapon integration, we are going to whack out the signature hook and slide this into this big meaty port, and there is Lockdown now fully transformed. Now, hunting his way across the galaxy, here we have Lockdown, now fully transformed into his souped up muscle car. And this, I think, looks awesome. A slightly more realistic take on the classic design, but still packing all of the same bells and whistles expected from an animated Lockdown. I'm really digging the integration of the exposed engine, that is looking sick. One thing which I've always loved when it comes around to this Lockdown design is regardless of what mode he has transformed into, he still appears to be brutal. I can totally imagine him mowing the Autobots down on the battlefield, making full use out of that serrated front bumper, even as we spin him around here to the back. In addition to the dual boosters, he's also packing triple exhaust pipes, so I should imagine this guy will absolutely be able to burn rubber whilst travelling through that multiversal portal. So, this Lockdown originally started off life as being a Junkion, so you are still totally able to dismember him, break him down, and use him for parts. So for the first step, you are going to want to come here to the shoulder and gently wriggle that bad boy out of the shoulder joint. We can then spin down to the legs, and from the shin downwards, you can completely sever this away from Lockdown's body, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, you guys may be asking yourselves, why exactly am I showcasing the Junkion compatibility? And that's because there is a pretty sweet mod you can do to this guy, just to make him slightly more Revenge of the Fallen inspired. And that would be by making use out of these baddies. So you are going to want to flip these suckers here to the underside. We can then whack back out the lower leg of Lockdown, and you are going to want to specifically slide that big meaty tab into the port on the underside of this blaster, until you guys are left with a pair of bad boys which are looking exactly like this. Because there was no way that I was going to be settling for stubby Lockdown. Here we have him now fully maximized in the leg department. You know, the Junkion compatibility means that you can pretty much customize this guy as you want. And I think so far this is the best configuration that I've been able to come up with. Now, I have seen a few other modifications out there where you can make use out of the arms from the Junkion crash bar. Now, whilst that definitely does help to maximize him in the articulation department, I just find the color mismatch to be a little too distracting. So, at least for myself, I think at the moment this is the superior configuration, and until we see a slightly better version of a Generations Lockdown, this is more than likely how I will be keeping him in the collection, because now he doesn't pair too badly stacked up against the animated universe Optimus Prime. Cruising through some vehicle mode comparisons, first up we have Legacy Axle Grease. Now, if you're like myself and you want to play into the whole idea of Lockdown being a bounty hunter, considering that these two are more or less exactly the same, they are also cross-compatible, so you could totally mix and match their limbs, which for a bounty hunter, I seriously think makes perfect sense. Here is how he sizes up alongside his live-action movie counterpart. We have the Studio Series Lockdown. Now, despite me always being a big fan of that Age of Extinction design, I've got to be honest guys, so far nothing has beat the original. Both the animated and the Revenge of the Fallen looks for this guy, I still think to this day, absolutely reign supreme. Next up, here we have the animated Bumblebee, and despite this Lockdown not being specifically based on that universe, I still think he pairs up pretty nicely with some of these other Legacy updates. Although, even with those boosters, I don't think B stands a chance in escaping the claws of Lockdown. Taking those live action movie opponents and pulling them into the Legacy universe, here we have both Optimus Prime and Lockdown. And again guys, I seriously don't think these two look too bad stacked up against each other at all. Although, I've still got to be honest, nothing right now is beating that original. Here we have the animated Deluxe class Lockdown. But one thing I did think was seriously awesome is you can definitely see the design similarities between the two. The engine block, the serrated front grille, those triple exhausts. I did think that was a pretty cool throwback. But there isn't another Lockdown on this planet right now which I think has the power to dethrone the amazing original Revenge of the Fallen Lockdown. It pretty much took everything which was perfect about that animated design, and at least in my opinion just made it better. So despite these being fairly similar when it comes to a few design traits, I've got to be honest guys, I am clamoring for the day that Hasbro take this actual design and blow it up into their Studio Series concept art subline, because I think that would be straight up fire. So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Legacy United Star Raiders Lockdown. Overall, the figure ain't too bad for being a repaint. I do believe that the design team have specifically said that the reason why they never titled this guy as Animated Universe is because unlike both Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, he isn't specifically spot on to that design. So at least to myself, that was confirmation that potentially in the future, we could see them revisit this character potentially as its own brand new mold, which I really think is what the character of Lockdown deserves. deserves. The vehicle mode on the other hand though, I think looks sick, kind of a realistic take on the character, but still packing all of the bells and whistles that you would expect from both a Revenge of the Fallen and animated Lockdown. So if you're impatient like myself and you are a big fan of Lockdown, then I don't think this would be a bad repaint to check out, but just know that Hasbro will definitely more than likely revisit this character in the future. I would love to get your guys' thoughts down below. What do you think of the brand new Lockdown? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next review, transform and roll out!